up for now.
Okay.
Which is a heroic feat of strength, by the way.
Okay. Well, thank you for being such a hero.
I'm just playing. I mean, the only reason it's heroic is because I went to bed less than 8 hours ago.
Wow.
So the question is, do we hang out now? Do we
Yeah.
reconvene at the
We're, we're
intended time?
we're hanging out now. I'm gonna broadcast the link to the Casper channel. For some reason I thought for sure it was. I must have screwed up. I'm sorry about because other people had said they wanted to.
So you suggested the 9 a.m. PDT time slot, and then
Yeah, I meant to say EDT. That was a typo.
yeah. So let's either way works for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, PDT is way past. So.
No, PDT 9 a.m. PDT is in 3 hours.
Oh. Oh, okay. Well, I'll see what other people think. I'll post in the. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to do it now if possible. 9 a.m. PDT. I have another meeting.
Sure. In any case, we can hang out now. But yeah, if you're not available at noon, then we should definitely do it now.
Okay. Okay, I'm just typing the. Okay, well, Jack said he can join.
What was that?
Jack's
Jack
going to be
said
here.
he can join. I don't know. I mean, Vitalik may be, you know.
Implementations
Yeah.
of Whisper, which was the
Yeah, I think
It's going to be like in the middle of the night in Switzerland, right?
yeah, Vitalik. No,
Is
it's
he in
not.
Switzerland now?
No, yeah, I don't. I think he is, but it's not in the middle of the day. Vitalik's not on
Yeah,
Friday.
it's in the middle of the day for sure.
So the era ethical were pushing for, as you say, yeah, we
Vitalik's
are
not on mine right now.
the implementation of Ethereum, both in terms of our design and in terms of our IP. And we're really pushing
the
best of the
coffee.
stack, developed out.
What's that?
I mean coffee.
We don't sort of
Seriously?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. and kind of explain what I was gonna update people on. Um, so hang on, I need to bring up a paper. Um,
Looks like many of the technologies that we see.
okay, I just need to now. Okie dokie, here we go. Cool. And screen share, and off we go. Okay, so you guys may remember that I've been droning on about traces and monoidal categories, and I actually even kind of talked about how, gave an intuitive explanation of how you think of the blockchain as a kind of braided monoidal category. And then I argued intuitively that the betting cycle is a kind of trace. So the way to another way to think about the betting cycle as a kind of trace is the trace is a feedback operator, right? So what you're trying to do is and convergence is in fact finding a fixed point, right? And that was also the intuition in the iterated function system view of the betting cycle. But by the way, I spoke with last night at length with Ethan Buckman and Matthew Wampler-Doty and kind of gave them the whole iterated function system view of the betting cycle. And I mean, Ethan seemed pretty convinced of that view. And when I talked to him about how to I explained both Aaron's approach and my approach to the proof sketch for convergence, and Ethan seemed, again, pretty convinced by that approach, although after I explained it to him, I was then confused as to how it gets around FLP impossibility, so I became less convinced. But anyway, I realized on last Friday, talking with Vlad, that the trace laws actually insist that your feedback mechanism converges, whatever it is. So showing that the betting cycle is, in fact, a trace is tantamount to showing that if there is convergence, that the betting cycle finds it. So that's actually extremely promising because it gives us a new angle on proving convergence. It gives essentially a different approach to the proof method. And so then the trick was to find a way to formalize how the betting cycle is in fact a trace. And so I've made some progress there. I remembered that Abramsky had identified a couple of categories, DREL and PREL, which are essentially categories of distributions and probabilistic relations, where the notion essentially you have notions of composing distributions both sequentially and in parallel, and there's a way to find a trace on that. It's a little bit more complicated because you find the category itself is not a monoidal category, but you find this thing called a nuclear ideal inside it. And so Abramsky identifies these things called tamed distributions, and then finds a trace on that. And so what that does is that gives us constraints on the kinds of strategies that we can that would be allowed in order to have convergence. So that's essentially the the update. I'm now sketching that out in terms of like how that relates to bets with history, right? So, in my model, every bet has a justification where the justification is, you know, the bet that it received that it's updating against, and since that bet must also have a justification, every bet is in fact, an entire history, of bets. Um, so my next step is to take that kind of the justified betting structure and show how you can turn that or interpret that in terms of these tame distributions, which will allow us, hopefully, to have a much more detailed proof of convergence.
Do you want to comment on FLP impossibility and um, dropped messages?
Um, Wait, can you say that again? You're a little quiet today. I'm not sure why.
I'm on my phone. That's probably why. Is this better?
Oh, it's a little better, yeah.
Can you comment on FLP impossibility and your new thoughts on the relationship between that and the iterative function system slash trace law approach? And
Uh, yeah,
yeah, so
yeah, yeah, sure. Okay, so the thing that's weird about the iterated function system approach is that what you do is you keep dropping the dimensionality of the simplex, right? So like the way we were talking about it last night was, imagine, so 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 just to get it really concrete. So imagine that you're just considering, say, four different proposed blocks at height h, and what you have. So that means you've got a simplex, um, that you've got a tetrahedron, and the bets are points. Some collection of bets are points inside that simplex, right? And what they're doing is they're tracing paths inside that simplex, and you're trying to nudge them towards one of the edges. Um, so the as you may recall, the initial idea that I had is you consider regions around the vertices that are sort of the tolerance from like absolute surety, um, and you eliminate the center, everything that isn't close enough to a vertex, and that's your attractor, right? And then you can use you can generate an iterated function system which will select that as an attractor. Now, of course, that attractor has all four possibilities. Um, so you have some slashing conditions, which so the slashing conditions say you have to be at least on a convergence path to one of them. But then what you do is you put some kind of condition on the bets on the updates have to push you off the barycenter. And that could work, except that you could still cycle, you could still, occupy the surface of some ball around the barycenter, right? You could have some weird wandering path. So last night we were looking at if you have some weird wandering ball, then you ought to be able to, like visually, there ought to be some projection where you can tell that the path is really just a closed curve, and and then at that point you slash everybody because they're not actually making progress, um, and you can do that because you have this bet history, right? So the so that will force people to, move off the barycenter and in some direction that will eliminate one of the vertices. And once you eliminate one of the vertices, you can iterate the whole algorithm by dropping a dimension, right? So you keep doing that. But if you keep dropping dimensions, then it seems like eventually you have to run up against, that you're actually making making a choice. Um, so you drop down to a univalent state, and that seems to somehow contradict FLP impossibility. And so I'm not sure so something has to give there, and I'm not sure what it is.
We can't we like have things just like perpetually be in a bivalent state due to like delays? I mean, I feel like the main thing that FLP impossibility relies on that I don't see here is message delays and messages being dropped completely.
Um, yeah, I mean we're accounting for like there's no time here. The only representation of time is
What
oh oh
the
oh
IFS get included in iterations of
so the representation of time is essentially the length of the words. So if
or in the order in which they appear or something like that. The order in
well,
which the
I mean,
letters
just
appear.
in terms of the bet structure, right? The only way you can tell that time has, oh no, yeah. So yeah, you're right. It's a combination of length of the word plus order, right? So essentially, a validator who's only seeing some subsets of the other validator's bets will have words that don't have a good representation of all the validators, right? So there'll be the function symbols in the word will have uh, will not be will not be equally represented, right? And so yeah, so that would represent delay or even network partition or something like that. So yeah, you're right.
Do you
That
think that
is
might let us, be in a bivalent state continually, even though the IFS has these attractors?
uh yes. I Yeah, I have to think that through a little more carefully.
Cool. Because my understanding of the FLP is that you know, it essentially uses crash faults, and so that would basically correspond to words not little I guess like letters not getting into the words, or letters perhaps getting into the words at the wrong times or late times.
Yeah, yeah. The main thing about using the iterated function system approach is that um, you you want there to be like the minimal amount of constraints. Like so you're picking the ideal schedule is one that you have a set of, how do I explain this? The the IFS that you generate from the attractor, um, uh, it is the one that picks out exactly that attractor, and so every orbit, every set of words that's increasing in infinite length is going to lead you off to one of those vertices, right? So there's like no constraints, or there's no constraint on the order. Um, how do I explain this? What I'm trying to say is it's the minimal amount of constraints on the strategies that
Yeah,
the
no,
validators.
I totally understand what you're saying there.
Uh,
I guess the reason that I'm having a hard time mapping on exactly the consensus setting is that um, you know the the things that I see when I place my bet
yeah,
um, you know isn't necessarily a prefix of a string that which has the property that the things that you see is also a prefix of that string.
Correct, because you don't necessarily know what I've seen.
Right, and things might
But
come in different orders, or things might come to me and not come to you, for example.
right, but the thing is, if when I make a bet, my bet includes the justification, and in that justification, if you're mentioned, at that point, I'm declaring that I know this is what I know about what you've seen.
Sure, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so then
So the justification idea includes the opinion idea.
yeah, so say someone drops out, how does that affect um you know I mean, I
Right.
guess in a way.
Yeah. So what it means is that there's gonna be some point at which, even though there are other validators bets that are represented in the justification, the one that's dropped out is no longer represented, right? So there'll be some, that validator is represented, and then nothing, right? And then there's no more presence of that function symbol in the justification.
But is there a reason why like the selective dropping out of these function signals at key times would lead to us staying in a bivalent state continually?
Yeah, yeah.
Is there?
Um, I, yeah. Well, the thing is that in you won't be able to drop a vertex, unless you have um, uh, essentially equal representation, right? Like there's no you can't apply the slashing condition because um, you don't know that the loop is closed because you haven't heard from every validator, right? So just think about it. What if they're they're in danger of wandering around a great circle on the ball? Okay, um, you don't know that the validator that isn't represented wouldn't take you off that great circle, right, in some direction away from the barycenter. So you can't apply the slashing condition, and so since you can't, so since you can't apply the slashing condition,
Hey, Chris, can you turn off your microphone? We're getting a lot of background sound. Thanks a lot. Sorry, can you just repeat that last sentence, Greg?
yeah, sure. So again, the setup is, imagine, just for the discussion's sake, imagine that they're wandering around a great circle, on the ball around the barycenter, right? And you can't actually apply the slashing condition if you haven't heard from one of the validators. And the reason is because that one validator might be the one that takes you off in a different direction. So it's only after you've heard from a round robin of validators that you can conclude, okay, they're really not making any progress, right? And so and at that point, if they've gone in a circle around the barycenter, then you know that they're actually in a state of equivocation. In which case, you can apply the slashing condition to the whole group. You're all malfeasant because but uh, so since you can't apply the slashing condition, you can't. You're not going to knock them off the vertex, or knock them off one of the vertices, right? And so you can't cut that vertex. So they're always in a multivalent state, um, uh, as long as you haven't heard from everybody. But as soon as you have heard, okay, so that's exactly the ace. Yeah, okay. Now I see how it correlates to FOP impossibility. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So there will be. So yeah, there's a tension here between liveness and multivalence. Okay, that makes me feel better.
And do you think that one node going offline could stop us from moving off the brazen, or do you think there's some amount of like threshold after which we'd be able to move off?
Right. So that's where you would have to introduce some kind of a timeout or some kind of some kind of the equivalence of some kind of synchronous communication, right? Which would then allow you to say, okay, well, um, you know, you know, yeah, yeah. You then have to adopt one of these other strategies for getting off the for allowing liveness. Yeah.
You mean to survive even one
Yeah.
fault,
Right.
or
Right. I mean that's exactly FLP impossibility. In the presence of
right?
even one unreliable node, you can't do this.
Yeah, but FLP impossibilities, and yeah, you're like you say, entirely asynchronous. So I'm wondering.
Right. Right. Exactly. So then that's what I'm saying is you have to introduce some kind of effective synchronous touchstone to get around this issue.
Do you want to help illustrate that about the trace IFS system?
So what you would then be doing is you'd be dropping. Let's see. Yeah, what it comes down to is saying that there's some subset of words that's still going to be associated with the attractor. Um, yeah, I'm not fast enough on my feet this morning to think about how that's gonna um, to tighten up that, right, because at some point if you have a timeout you can say, all right, well, whatever, we haven't heard from this cat, so we can't let this cat hold us up, or alternatively, if we haven't heard from enough of these critters, then the round has failed, right, and so either reinitiate or do something like that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I do, but definitely we're gonna need to revisit this.
Oh yeah, no question. But I mean, I'm just happy that I see how the FLP impossibility impinges upon shows up in the IFS representation. So
Yeah, I mean, it would be discouraging if it didn't, and it's promising that it does.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah,
Cool. So maybe we can pivot to some other discussion then.
absolutely, yeah. So I mean, essentially, that's what I've been working on so far.
Cool.
Does anyone else want to give another update?
So the couple things that I've been working on are basically a strategy for reducing Casper's overhead and my sharding solution for basically having a kind of atomicity of transactions across many shards, even if shards like, sensor transactions, revert transactions, reorg transactions, etc. Um, and that has like, synchronous, asynchronous calls. So I don't know, whatever people want to hear about, I guess.
Well, give us a flavor of both.
Sure, gladly. So, in terms of reducing Casper's overhead, um, the main thing that I would like to show and would like to be able to do is to have a statement of the form, uh, Casper will never have more than X betting cycles active, and still be able to prove an eventual consistency guarantee. Um, and to have the property that say. So right now, if we insist on having a betting cycles for blocks at heights until they finalize, then if there's a partition or some number of nodes go offline or some where there's non-convergence for whatever reason, the number of betting cycles that we're engaged in will just increase over time, and that will basically cause a lot of overhead on the validators, which will eventually break them. And so what we want is like not to have this property that we need to be engaged in every betting cycle until it finalizes, and instead move into some kind of paradigm where we are able to have a fork choice rule kind of dynamic. And so my strategy is essentially to have a rule for what betting cycles you're engaged in, such that validators are basically forced to participate together in sets of betting cycles, and that clients can choose between the different sets of validators who are participating in disjoint sets of betting cycles, so that there's like a clean fork choice rule that you can just say, okay, which disjoint sets of validators that are betting on disjoint sets of propositions do I go with? And basically, you would go with the one that has the most deposits. And basically the way that this would go is basically that every betting cycle or every bet would basically have some kind of it would depend on some picture of what the kind of restricted view of betting cycles that validator is betting on is participating in. And the way that I've been reasoning about this is basically that there's a process that manages the betting cycles that everyone is involved in, and it's it's gonna be in some sense in the state, in the sense that only bets for those cycles will be accepted, and only bets for those cycles will be economically valuable in that fork. And I was using the language of meta propositions because I regard this statement about what betting cycles that you're participating in as kind of like a proposition about what propositions you're betting on. Because every betting cycle is in a sense making some proposition true, or making it more true in the consensus setting. So it would be more true that a block will be executed at a height than some other block if there's been more economic weight behind it from the validators. So my strategy is to make it so that validators have to choose between disjoint groups of betting cycles, and so that clients can choose between groups of validators who are operating kind of on separate sets of betting cycles. And basically my idea is to make every one of these meta propositions mutually contradictory, so that if you bet under one and under the other, then if you finalize under one and finalize under the other one, then you lose all your deposit. I mean, or if you bet with high confidence in one and high confidence in the other, then you lose all or almost all of your deposit. So I'm not sure if that's making any sense to you, but if you ask me some questions, I might feel a little better.
Well, I'm still concerned that the space of meta propositions is super large, and I don't know how you whittle it down.
Yeah. So to me, I'm not starting from the set of all meta propositions and whittling it down. I'm starting from the current one that we have, which is bet on all blocks at all heights and all states at all heights, and kind of whittling it up into some set that still has this property that any two members of the set are mutually contradictory. Because if I don't have that, then you start to have to reason about it starts to be quite complicated when you might have three meta propositions which are non-consistent, but any two of them aren't. So for now.
Okay, so you're talking about freely generating a structure such that any two element. So if we think about meta propositions as denoting sets, then what you're saying is you're building a structure of sets, where freely generating a structure of sets such that they're all pairwise disjoint. So
I'm definitely not freely generating them. I'm going to very carefully pick a set of these sets.
Okay. I
Out
mean,
of out of the
if you
3
freely
set.
generate, you can make free generation be carefully picked, right? And like
Okay.
for example, like when every time you write down a grammar, like a BNF grammar, you're kind of carefully picking the sets
Oh yeah, I see that.
that you're willing to. Yeah.
Totally. I just mean I'm not considering like the set of all mutually contradictory sets.
Okay. Understood. Understood.
Yeah. So the size of the meta proposition space doesn't concern me that much. The thing that concerns me more is um, how to deal with validators that might be participating in 2 of them at once, and therefore making it hard for clients to reason about um, which fork to go with. You have to worry about like what happens to a validator that participates in 2 of them. Is it like an immediate death sentence? If so, then I have a pretty easy way to reason about which one to go with. If it's not a death sentence, then I need to have I just need to be able to make sure that I can like make some statements about my fork choice rule that work, even though a validator might be participating with the same deposit on 2 different sets of betting cycles.
Okay. Cool.
So that work is still very much ongoing and immature, but it is really important that we make sure that Casper's overhead doesn't explode in these failure modes.
Understood. Agreed.
Vitalik's current approach to reducing overhead seems to be to take another look at by blockchain consensus or maybe by using fork trees and tree choice rules rather than fork choice rules in a kind of like ghost-like protocol. But we're both basically looking at how we can keep all of Casper's key properties of like finality and low latency, but without having the overhead blow up in edge cases.
Cool. And did you want to talk about the sharding stuff?
Yeah, sure, I would love to. So the main the bulk of the protocol is the transaction execution protocol, which basically is the thing that it's like a the thing that guarantees that transactions will be executed completely or not at all. Um, so I guess I could just describe the plain vanilla no exceptions transaction execution protocol, and then give you an idea about how we start handling exceptions. And maybe we can talk about synchronous calls and asynchronous calls and how that might look in the EVM. And this is like maybe something that Martin might be super interested in because he's working.
Can I confirm? Interesting. So I have an idea about this. I think you should just make all the calls asynchronous.
So there is a reason why I used to totally agree with you, and there's also a reason why I don't anymore. So
Well, first of all, do we want to go down this path right now, or
yeah,
like is
I
it
think now is a good
appropriate
time.
time?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think now is totally fine. So the reason why I used to really like the idea of only doing synchronous calls is because it was much easier to reason about my transaction execution protocol in that context, because I didn't ever have to have things queuing up waiting for a callback before being executed. But if applications require synchronous calls, i.e., if they have to hear back before they do anything else in order to like make sure that they're like, because that's just necessary for their logic,
Mm-hmm.
then what they're gonna have to do is basically write in the EVM code, right, or like so either in the higher level language or the compiler would somehow manage this, the mechanism for queuing up,
Right.
call data and executing it after the callback.
Yeah, so you'd have to add extra logic in a higher
And
level language.
exactly, and
Yeah, that's what I'm
the
relying
issue
off of.
exactly, and this is what I was initially doing, and I thought it was totally hunky dory, but now I'm not so comfortable with it because it makes it say that we have some contract A, and contract A made a sync call, and then some transaction comes into contract A, and now is like being queued up because contract A is implementing a sync call in async land. And so and then the callback comes back, and this call was triggered by transaction 1, and then and so the second transaction we call transaction 2, and then this callback comes back, and then now transaction 1 can be executed, and transaction 1's payload was stored in the contract, and so after the call comes back, transaction 1's payload starts to get executed, and so the issue with this is that the protocol can't actually tell that the state transitions that occurred after the callback, after some point, should be paid for by the gas base of transaction 1.
Oh, yeah, I guess it. So,
So then what you need to do is you need to give the contract the right to identify the gas base which will be paying for a particular transition, and that's something I don't want to put. I don't want to put that burden on developers. Or on
well, the thing is, it wouldn't be. It should be, if we had a proper high-level language, it would be very opaque. It wouldn't be opaque. I mean, the developer wouldn't even see it.
Totally, but then I'm pushing this responsibility to Christoph.
Yeah.
Sorry, to Christian.
Yeah.
And I would rather not do that. It feels ugly. Because it still is pushing it to the EVM, right? We need to have like an EVM like omp code for gas payer is X, or something, and it starts to get like at that point I start to get a headache, and I say, okay, let me just do synchronous calls in protocol and deal with this queuing, and that way I can uniquely identify a transition with a gas base and have like some guarantees there.
Yeah, I'm okay. So I'm okay with both of them existing, as long as the synchronous. We figure out a way to properly price synchronous calls, because like intuitively they should be cost a lot more.
I agree completely.
Because they're forcing the whole system to slow down. So they need to.
They force all communications to that contract to slow down.
Right.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you, and they should totally be more expensive. Exactly how much more expensive, I don't know how to work that out, but I'll leave that to you.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So does anyone have any questions about that gas price shenanigans, or should we go to the transaction execution protocol?
I'm just poking in on the side here, guys. There's the general chat. I'm not going to turn my mic on because it's going to have some overlap, but I will poke in with the general chat whenever I feel like it.
Cool. And so I guess.
But you can read it async though, so you don't need to stop your conversation.
Okay, but you don't have any questions right now. Let me see if I can read it actually on my phone. It's like a little bit more.
Oh, okay. Here's the group chat. I see. To get the same bet. So Chris asked, so does a single validator pretend it's to get on the same bet and game the system by slightly increasing? Oh, so you're asking basically, is Syllabi attack relevant here?
Sybil, but Chris, in that case, even if it pretends it's 2, it's got to put up 2 different stakes. So one of those stakes it's going to lose. I'm not sure. I mean, I know what promises are, but I'm not sure what the promise methodology here is how it's accomplishing eliminating complexity, or which problem we're attempting to use to solve.
Yeah. So.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. In the sure.
Promises are great high-level language. Abstraction, but when you're dealing with like the low-level VM, we can't have anything. Yeah, we only have like timers, and low-level opcodes, so we can't use promise types in the virtual machine itself, if that makes any sense.
Actually, I'll point you to the work by Danby. There's a way to have a continuation register. So you could do that. You could make a virtual machine where one of the registers is a continuation register, and in fact you can even do one better. You can have a virtual machine. Brown has a virtual machine that has a continuation register and a meta continuation register. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Meta? Okay, I'll have to check that out. That sounds interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
I'll send you the references.
And so is this going to be something that might be useful for implementing these synchronous calls?
Yeah, that would be potentially. As soon as I gotta grok it though. Meta continuation.
Hi, Vitalik.
Hey, Vitalik, how are you doing?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Sweet. Hanging out in Switzerland still?
Yep. Well, I just got into Switzerland, so.
Oh, okay. I'm missing you here in New York.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So we just spent some time talking about the kind of IFS system approach to convergence and how that relates to FOP and possibility, and then I
Right.
spent some time talking about my current strategy for reducing Casper's overhead,
Which is
and I
what?
kind of talked a little bit about what you were up to, but maybe I should give you an opportunity
So what do you
to
think
talk about
about
that.
that?
Sure.
Huh?
I didn't catch what you just said.
Well, so what I've been thinking of well, I mean, I've been kind of posting a lot of what I've been thinking about in that Casper channel. I've been trying to, I basically realized that if you force every block to contain exactly one bet, then you don't really change the economics and you get a DAG algorithm. So I'm looking at DAG algorithms, and I'm also trying to figure out. Actually, the latest thing I was doing is I was trying to make my way through Andrew Miller's consensus paper that tried to show the big formal properties about proof of work, and I was trying to see if it applies to proof of stake with private randomness as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm gonna be hopefully in Cornell in a couple weeks. I mean, I will be in Cornell in a couple weeks, and I'm hoping to spend a lot of time with Andrew,
Excellent.
Elaine, etc. on
Uh,
all sorts of this nonsense.
Great.
Sweet. So in terms of having every block conclude one bet, are you giving them some degree of freedom, or is it like one of these like here's the dependency graph of the block, and that's going to be implied bet?
Yeah. So the model I'm using is that basically, like you would have to provide either a block would have to provide a parent and it would have to provide some number of, and it could provide other ancestors with whatever bet probabilities it wants.
Okay, cool. So you are just like it is just basically as if you had a rule where a block has to include only one bet.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and so but do you still have betting on like what are these bets on? Like you have like conversion.
So essentially, this is kind of more by chain. So the idea is that when you bet on a block on a block, and the block is part of a chain, so you're betting that that block will be part of the well.
Kind of like the
So
eventual tree choice rule.
yeah, pretty much. Like I'm thinking of using kind of Ghost as the tree choice role and then creating a sort of basically copying over like good old Aviv and Yonatan's inclusive Ghost algorithm, and
Yeah.
then
So so
on
in
top of that, adding in an extra role, people can kind of go with more confidence. So like exponentially approaching one, and that particular blocks are final.
so that's what I'm curious about. Like, what does it look like for say a subtree to be finalized?
So it's not so much as so remember, even in these ghost algorithms, there's always one main chain, and so if a block in that chain is finalized, that means that that's everything up to that point is finalized.
Okay, so that's not all of these ghost algorithms. That's only like some of them, right?
It's not all of what?
I thought that it's only some of those. Some of the tree choice algorithms have that.
Wait, sorry. Some of the treatment algorithms have what?
Like I thought Ghost plus plus didn't have like a main chain.
Um, well, okay, it kind of doesn't, and yet it kind of does. So the thing that you actually have to realize is that there's a, if you don't have if you don't have any notion of a main chain, you just make it dead. You actually have this weird effect where in some cases like you might have like old state that pretty much never converges.
Yeah,
Um,
so this is exactly what I'm concerned about.
yeah, so basically, if you force a kind of if you force a kind of mainline thing, and then you just do sort of that plus article inclusion, then you get a similar thing, except you don't have that problem.
Okay, yeah, I see that. So you are planning on having like state finality and having like some sense everything later has to be after that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so you're not giving up like, finality in any way at all.
Hmm.
That's good. Yeah. So are you so like, but you're not doing any kind of by block finality. You're only doing state finality, and that's the sense in which you're doing it by chain, right?
So basically, yeah. The nice thing about my chain finality is that it gives you like much more theoretically quite a lot more efficiency, and
In terms of overhead.
yeah, exactly. And like at similar levels of overhead, you can get to very low walk times.
Right. Yeah. So the nice thing that when I was working on like the tree choice like the ghosty very ghosty version of Casper was that because I had betting by block at every height, I could very clearly state the property that I was using to make sure that you can't get a block that you produce later be to affect a state that like happened earlier because you know and it basically turned up to like your ability to uh, get
So,
something into the dependency graph of a winning block at an earlier height.
so my approach is that blocks that make it into the DAG are just basically so every block has a parent and every block can include like other blocks, and so it's kind of like a current to theorem uncle inclusion, except the difference is that with uncles you just sequentially process all transactions in them.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I got it.
yes, you still get the
Ye-
fidelity.
Yeah, totally. But the thing that I want to like hear is like, okay, what is the guarantee that I can't produce a block like an uncle that will be, you know, executed at some like earlier height.
So if the block is finalized, then every block that gets included in some future block is where the state transitions are going to come after it.
Okay, sure, but if say like at above that finalized height, do you have any eventual consistency guarantees or something like or like any idea about why it might be hard to get it in before other blocks that
Hold on, what do you mean? Specific example?
Sure. So, say we have finality at height h. People are
Mhm.
currently producing blocks at height h plus 50. I want to produce a block at height h plus 25. Seeing
At
if
height
that is
what? 35, we're saying at height h plus 25?
yeah. So I want to get
Okay.
a transaction executed at height h plus 25. So I produce a block at height h plus 25, and then the
So,
question is like,
so the
what?
chances are your block is only going to get included in, some block at height h plus 51, so it'll be
Right.
at
So I want to know what does it take? Like, what would I have to do in order to get my block included at that height?
so So first of all, if the main chain is like already past h plus 25, the chances are you're not going to get anything included at h plus 25.
Sure, but I want to like I want to hear like precisely like why or what it would take for me to do that. Given that like reorgs are possible.
Basically, you would have to make a heavier subtree.
Right. And so it would that be like so what's how do I calculate the weight of a subtree?
Same as so the default is same as the ghost algorithm, but then the question is like if you have these bets that are closer to 100%, then how do you include that in the calculation? And that's something I'm kind of delaying on figuring that out because I want to make sure that the base algorithm itself like has some decent has some kind of consensus properties to it.
So, but the ghost algorithm is just using total difficulty, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, counting blocks.
So here would be like total number of blocks, effectively.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and you have a property about like a synchronous assumption that limits the block rate.
Well, yeah, like each blocks can only be created at particular time slots.
Right.
So
Okay.
you still have another.
I could see that surviving under a fault tolerance analysis.
I mean, every version of Casper we've had has a notion of blocks existing only, or blocks only being creatable by particular validators during particular time slots.
No, not my version. Not my versions of Casper V.
Uh,
I've never had that.
you've never had any of these time slots.
No, I never have. I just have like the round robin order being the one that is the most profitable for them to produce it in, and like the faster they do it, the better. I never like tried.
Yeah, I don't really like that. I don't really like those approaches because I feel they incentivize centralization too much.
Yeah, so I don't really feel that way because I feel that if you try to centralize and there is a node who isn't going with it, then all of a sudden your like the centralization will stop because it'll be more costly to drop a node out than to centralize.
Well, hold on. If the node.
So unless all nodes participate, I don't agree.
Well, no, but there's it's like mining, right? If some nodes start concentrating in their data centers, then all the other nodes have the incentive to start concentrating there.
Yeah, so they have the incentive to start concentrating there, but if they can't or if they won't, then everyone has they aren't just gonna be censored, aren't just gonna be dropped out.
Well, if some nodes don't, then they could just end up sort of not being accepted as part of the chain.
No, they won't because everyone will be penalized for that.
See, I'm not. Right. So this gets into that kind of.
How we prevent selfish mining, right? Is that like you have a really strong incentive for all the blocks to get in, because if they don't, you like penalize everyone.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you don't have that in your thing yet, but do you still intend on? Do you still like that?
So I've been thinking about that. One of the challenges that I see is that I just have the feeling that it's going to be hard. First of all, even with that kind of mechanism, I feel like it doesn't actually fix the griefing problem because basically imagine some attacker manages to grief the system just enough that the average staking return drops from like plus 5% to plus 0%. Then all of a sudden, just by doing that, they've managed to potentially knock participation long term down by like 50 or 90% or whatever.
So, but then we're talking about choosing between censorship and possibility of griefing, and I would much rather allow the possibility of griefing because griefing is at least costly, whereas censorship is profitable.
I think there's some balance between those.
Yeah, but the balance is not making the grief super duper expensive by not making the penalty super duper high. It's not the balance isn't going to be not having any penalty, right? The balance is just having a reasonable penalty.
Sure, but yeah, but the question is what is reasonable, right? So
right, and
if the Bitcoin approach is you have zero sum, then the other approach is that you can just have everyone's rewards get calculated independently. So we think it's kind of so not including others blocks is sort of neutral towards you, and then you could try to actually punish everyone. And
I certainly want it to be negative sum.
Okay, see, I'm getting the feeling that even neutral might be a bit too scary.
I think that censorship and selfish mining is way too scary, and that any zero-sum game will lead to that because.
Well, right, but you can have partially positive sums, so you can mitigate it.
Do you want to can you describe that a little bit? I'm not following it all.
Okay, so with a zero-sum game, basically, imagine you have 10 points and you just distribute it to miners by percentage, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a kind of neutral algorithm, you basically have the equivalent of a fixed difficulty, right?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. I'm not sure if you're stepping away from your microphone or if it's just breaking up.
Yeah, with a neutral algorithm, you might have something like a fixed difficulty. So your for revenue depends only on your hash power and on nothing else, right?
No. So that I mean, I don't understand exactly because it's not just about your revenue; it's about the proportion of blocks that you have in the chain.
Well, hold on. So
So there's two parts to selfish mining, right? One of them
yeah,
is
well, the point of
getting a higher proportion of blocks in the chain, be your
yeah,
blocks, and the other is getting a higher number of rewards.
right, hold on. But the reason why getting a higher portion of blocks is good in the first place is because of the rewards.
No, because it also gives you more power to censor and revert history. So there is more to it than just block rewards.
Right. I guess I'm just trying to start off by getting the block reward stuff right.
Okay, sure. So that's fine. Let's just keep the discussion going. So
Mhm.
please continue.
Okay. So so aside from like those two choices, right, where one choice is a fixed reward, the other is a where the reward only depends on kind of the quality of the individual validator. You kind of get both of those.
Yeah, totally. And then there's the third one, which is the negative payout one, right?
Right, and then there's the fourth one, which is kind of positive, but not as extreme as zero sum.
So I don't understand that fourth one. Like what?
Okay, so let's say a concrete example. Let's suppose validator A has quality 10, validator B has quality 10. Let's say they both get rewards of like 50 and 50. Now let's say validator 1 goes up to quality 11. Let's say his reward goes up to 55 and the other validator's reward goes down to, let's say, 48. So
Oh,
it's not.
I
Hmm?
see. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay. So going back into censorship land, how would this look if, say, we decided to exclude Greg from the chain because we're trying to centralize, and he's just too high latency for us. Um, would I mean in my world,
So
I
this is the
would
case where everyone
do
tries to like convert it to a data center, or
yeah, everyone tries to make the same center because um
mm,
so but to me, if we exclude Greg, in my world, we get negative payouts and Greg gets negative payouts, and so there's like excluding Greg is a net negative for
right?
in total. In your
Right.
world,
So the
what
problem.
happens?
So the issue with the negative payouts basically is that if, let's say, create enough negative payouts that that everyone's returns go negative, then like within a few, nothing's going to happen immediately, but within a few months, like other people who aren't um, profit seeking are going to drop out, or sorry, who are
Totally, yeah.
profit seeking are going to drop out.
Completely, yeah, completely, and that's a totally a valid attack, but it is going to cost you in this world, right? You're going to
Hmm.
have to pay for as long as it takes. You're going to basically have to do a war of attrition with everyone.
Yeah.
And if you win, you're going to have a higher proportion of the overall stake. But the flip side is, suppose that we are in a majority coalition. Um, if we don't have this griefing possibility, then it's just profitable for us to censor straight up.
Sure.
And to me, it's like it's better to have a world where all failures are expensive than a world where it is impossible to have a small portion of the stake and to incur a large expense in order to kick people off.
Mm. So the right, but then I suppose the issue, the concern is that like it is it is expensive in the short term, right? But in the long term, it actually is going to be profitable for you because like the fact is fees are zero sum game no matter what happens.
Yeah, in the long term, I agree with you, but in the long term, censorship is profitable. Period. Right. Um, so in the long term, you know, we always have uh, problems.
Yeah.
People are going to drop out either forcefully or due to the fact that they're not profitable.
Hmm.
So, but in the short term, I have bigger problems with censorship being profitable than with griefing being possible.
Right. Okay. Okay. So going back to this.
Basically, again, I'm more worried about majority who seeks profit than a minority who seeks control but doesn't seek profit.
Right.
Whereas it
I
seems
tend
like
to be more
you're
worried
more
about
concerned
minorities than
about. What did you
majorities.
say?
I tend to be more worried about minorities than majorities.
I understand the instinct, but the question is, how much money are they going to lose, and is that on the order of what it would take to, rent a majority of the stake? Because you're not going to lose those deposits at all in
Right.
a partnership world, right?
Mhm.
And then my basic uh, feeling is that probably we can force it to be more expensive to grief than it would be to pay interest on a majority of the deposits.
Right. Actually, hold on, Vlad. One thing here. In your algorithm, so you have this validator round robin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if one validator in that round robin is offline?
Yeah, I mean everyone gets less rewards because everyone.
No, hold on. My question isn't about the rewards. My question is, what's the next block going to be?
Oh, well, I mean the next block is always determined by a betting cycle, and for everyone, and there's gonna be like a slight pull towards the next validator's block being the one that wins at that height, because everyone will find it more profitable if they win there. But the betting cycle always determines what block at the next height.
Right. Um. Trying to sort of think about this. Hold on.
Hey guys, I have to jump off now. I can leave the Hangout open for about 20 more minutes, or you guys can, make a new Hangout and continue, whichever one you want. But
Greg, I need to have a short conversation with you about logistics for today and tomorrow. How can I best do that? And like the sooner the better for me.
well, I mean, we can just end the Hangout here. It's already an hour, 10 minutes over.
Okay, is everyone okay with that, or do we have anything to talk about?
This one.
Cool.
Let's just do you guys want to schedule another hangout for Friday? I feel like we can do more talking, and I'm totally free on Friday at the moment.
Sure.
I can do that.
Sweet. So let's do that, and that way I don't have to feel bad about ending this short, and I can get my logistics call out of the way, and maybe I can even get a nap before the rest of the day starts.
Cool.
V, let's continue this conversation because I think it is interesting and also important.
Yeah. Okay.
Sweet. Cheers. Thanks
Cheers.
for tuning in, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Ciao, ciao.